So imagine, if you would, that you're in your early 40s, or maybe you are in your early 40s. You've built a life of sorts for yourself here in Rhode Island. Maybe you're partnered and you're happy, though you increasingly notice that your friends are struggling. It's harder to pay rent, to buy food, and to feel safe. Maybe you're in your 30s and it's just hard. You don't have this career that boomers speak of. It's been hard to find a job that pays enough, let alone a job that feels like a career. You have your friends and your chosen family, and if you're lucky, your family of origin too. Maybe you're in your 50s or 60s or well beyond, in that time of life where you're fading down in the work world, or you're in that period of retirement that is the busiest time in the world, it seems to me. Maybe you're in your 20s and you're in a homeless shelter, trying to work out all the stuff in that stage of life, all that it involves, and you don't have a safety net, including the family that's rejected you. This, reframed to protect the innocent, to protect those I work with, is a mix of the lives I encounter day after day. When I'm not here with you or with another congregation, I'm a therapist seeing clients. I serve largely an LGBTQ population. The majority of my clients are transgender or non-binary, and I'm often working with them to make that transition from younger adulthood to older adulthood, engaging with all the usual questions that one encounters along the way. What will I do for money? Do I want a career or a job? Who should I date, and what does it mean when that doesn't feel good to me? Where should I live? Do I want kids in my life, biological or otherwise? But for this group, there's more painful questions. What relationship do I want around family that will not recognize all of who I am? How careful do I want to or need to be in public? A question especially true for trans femme women, to try and ensure my safety. How much of my true self do I share with those outside of my immediate circle? What do I do when I encounter transphobia and hate? Who are safe providers, doctors, therapists, dentists? Where is it safe for me to live? What faith communities will welcome me, and will they show it in their actions and not just their words? These are baseline questions that LGBTQ adults, children, everyone are asking right now. I guess children aren't asking where they live, but you know. But now, the questions have taken on another layer of urgency. Each week, more of them, more of us ask, am I safe here? Should I leave now or wait to see if it worsens? Should I be less obvious? Should I go stealth and hide my transness? Should I detransition, stop taking gender-affirming medication, and go back to my birth gender as much as possible? What should I do? And let me state, this is not a theoretical question. What should I do when the government sends me back my passport with my birth gender instead of my present gender, making my identifications purposely not aligned, and making travel and much else all but impossible? If I leave, where should I go? Where is safer? Can I afford to leave? How can I leave my support system? And let me say here, some of you heard I was moving to Canada. Turns out that's not true. Not because I'm not scared, but because I can't stop the fight here, and because I can't leave my people. Not yet. But the most painful question being asked by many is, do I want to live through this? Is it just too much? Suicidality is skyrocketing for this population at a time when resources on college campuses have been prohibited. Gender-affirming care is beginning to disappear, even here in New England. Medicaid cuts means goodbye to therapy for many. Suicide lifelines have been defunded, as have many pride centers. None of this is unintentional. And I won't spend a day going into the horrific laws against trans and non-binary folks, except to say they are horrific in ways that most cisgender folks aren't aware of, because you don't need to be, but they are horrific. And my young adult clients, they feel this all the time. And when they find out I'm a minister, and it's not like I hide it, but I don't advertise it, they ask, how can faith do this? How can faith be weaponized to marginalize people for living as their true selves? I tell them that's not faith. If anyone's faith is dependent upon the marginalization of others, that's the furthest thing from faith or spirituality. It is hate in a fancy package. I know I don't need to tell you this. You know what it means for white, racist, Christian nationalists to be running our governments. You know that the laws that they represent don't support faith, love, or any other quality of care that we are committed to. From reproductive choice to the right to health care, and now to the access to basic food resources, these oligarchs are set on two things: power and the accumulation of wealth. And this is the time in the sermon where maybe I risk most of all by telling you a Bible story. I feel compelled to remind you of the story of Jesus and the moneylenders. There was a time when the moneylenders lent money inside the temple, inside what was known as the Holy of Holies. But over time, they got greedier. And it got to the point where it was what's called usury, where you are, it's not that you're making money you need to make, you are making money literally to make the people suffer. And that's when Jesus came in and literally flipped the moneylenders' tables, literally collapsed the system, reminding them in no uncertain terms that faith, any faith, is about caring for the most marginalized. Anything that tells you anything that acts in another way is a lie. The Christian nationalists funding these anti-trans laws for years now, they don't represent faith. I read yesterday that there's this whole crop of liberal Christian ministers running for office because they want to say just that they do not represent faith. They do not represent Christianity. I explain how the worst of the cruelty is happening for political purposes, that if the administration can make you hate us, if they can make you hate a group, if they can make us hate immigrants or disabled people or neurodivergent people or indigenous people, if you can foster enough hate and incite enough violence, we can let us destroy ourselves. And while that's happening, they get rich off the public coffers. All to say that the war on trans people is not about trans people. We're just a very, very easy target. And now a very vulnerable one, thanks to them. There is no scripture anywhere that denigrates transgender and non-binary people. To the contrary, there is much that says otherwise. There are many faiths that understand a variety of genders. And we as UUs, we understand revelation to be ongoing. We celebrate all sources as holy. We know that simply to exist is to be worthy and to be loved. Our universalist forebears assured us of dignity, and there is no administration, no law that takes that truth away, even when the laws say otherwise. Do you get that? The question is, as people of faith, how do we continue to respond? How do we shift a theology of hate towards trans folks, towards one of love? Turns out there's a little bit of an answer, liberation theology. If you go back to the early 70s in Latin America, there were lots of groups being oppressed by the Catholic Church. And I'll go off on a tangent here and tell you about one of them. There's a book I love called Proverbs of Ashes, written by two ministers, the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, one of our UU beloveds, and Reverend Nakashima Brock. And it is a book about the liberation theology around the abuse of women, and the Catholic Church in Latin America for years telling women to stay in marriages, where they knew women were being abused. And this book says, no theology that tells you to suffer is a good theology. And they began to literally rewrite a theology in a way that made sense for the most marginalized among them. Then as now, they understand that movements for freedom begin with the people impacted, people asking to be seen in their wholeness and their right for survival. And liberation theology has helped around the world for years. Fights in Ireland and India and South Korea and Palestine, to name but a few, because it's akin to our own belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every being. It rejects any theology of oppression, and it literally resets church teachings to be relevant to, supportive of, and freeing to those who would otherwise be marginalized for their very existence. So it sets us free to reject doctrines of hate, and it invokes us to ask the question in our own faith communities, are we teaching and acting in ways that liberate? Is there more that we can do, should do, must do? What does it mean in these times to remain steadfast in our allegiance to our transgender beloveds, friends, family, congregants, and more? Who is most at risk, and how do we respond faithfully to that need? And there's no one answer, sorry, not a singular answer. But I'm here to invoke you to be an active part of that liberative theology. Despite what this administration would have you think, there are not a large proportion of trans people in this world. And there's actually not enough of us to win against the onslaught of hate being perpetuated against us. We need you. We need you to fight with us. Trans people are terrified, rightly, for their future, for their lives, and we're all asking these questions again and again with urgency. I ask myself these questions. Am I safe here? When is it time to believe? And how do I protect my beloveds from this cruelty? Like so many others, I no longer feel safe living here. And when I say here, I mean in this country. And I own that the worst abuses are being perpetuated on immigrants and increasingly racially profiling so many other citizens and otherwise. And that protest against that could not be more urgent. I'm not asking you to give that up in any way. And we need you. There's a sense that we've done enough simply by forming welcoming communities. We're on our way. The UUA and 6 other major denominations put out a statement of support this week. And it's a good statement, and it's an important statement. And it's a statement, right? There's no action behind it. There's no money behind it. There's no specific goal behind it. So how do we make this or any other UU congregation safe? And let me be clear. As much as we think we're safe, we're not. There is, and I will tell you a story, but it's true for all of my colleagues too. There's rarely a Sunday, I think with the exception of Westminster, so kudos, where I walk in and I'm not misgendered or something doesn't happen before I ever get to the pulpit. I was preaching a few weeks ago, and I won't name them, locally Mass, and a gentleman stopped me on my way, congregant stopped me on my way to the pulpit and said, I need to interrupt you. Okay, I don't believe in non-binary. And I was kind of stunned, and I looked at him for a second, and I said, you don't have to believe it for it to be true, and I walked off. Thank you. But I'll tell you, this happens again and again. And it's not because we don't care. It's because we read things that tell us lies and we begin to believe them. I hear back from you congregations the lies of the administration, because if you say lies enough time, it begins to get into our skin. So those of you that are doing the Transforming Hearts collective work, keep doing it. And those of you that are not, I implore you, at a minimum, do that. Because it reminds us of the things we just simply aren't aware of. Sorry, I got too excited and lost my place. I and others will not survive if you don't make this your fight. We are not safe in UU congregations or anywhere else because we say so, but because we make it so. So I ask, what are we doing to take care of each other, both inside and outside of these walls? Are you reading news to understand what trans people and non-binary people are experiencing? Are you asking your trans and non-binary friends and children and beloveds what they need? Are you pushing through your own bias to think gender diversity is a choice or a fad or not life and death? And let me tell you, I'll just use myself as an example. I would not be here today if I had not transitioned. I would not be here today. And I think you're fairly glad I'm here. I want you to be that glad for everyone. In this time of hate, how do we extend love? Again and again in ever more expansive ways. In areas where we have some control. I don't have all the answers. I just have the call. But I know as we push back against the tide of Christian nationalism in all the ways, it is our call, it is our need to live into that theology of liberation, to recognize the worth and dignity of all, and to fight like hell for that. May we live into that call unceasingly until all are free. Amen.